1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Omar.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
Welcome to another edition of X's and Omar. We're calling this the bye week Friday edition. The Dolphins are back to 500, 2-2 on the season, heading into the bye week following a 38-14 thrashing over the Raiders in London. Miami rebounded from 19-point losses to the Bills and Chiefs to produce a blowout victory. We thought this might be a survivor game between the two coaches, and that's what it was. Dennis Allen voted off the island.
Tony Sparano is back.
Yes, he is back.
Who ever thought he'd be a head coach again?
I know. Well, and Joe Philbin gets to keep his spot as the Dolphins head coach. I'm WPC CBS 12's Matt Lincoln. He's the Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly. Hopefully, we're going to use this episode of X's and Omar to set you up for the final 12 games of the season. And if there's anything that we could tell from the first 4 games, try to figure out how the next 12 are going to go. What's interesting right now, Patriots, Bills, and the Dolphins are all 2-2 heading into this week's games. Considering what has happened, right now are the Dolphins the best team in the AFC East?
Let's slow down a little bit. I know the Patriots.
Who's better?
Well, the Patriots still have the elite quarterback. Obviously,
Okay.
he's not playing like an elite quarterback. That's because the Patriots, as we said in episode 1, they didn't give him that many weapons.
Right.
He's got a suspect offensive line. The center of the offensive line is very soft. He's got no weapons. They don't have any power back because they got rid of LeGarrette Blount. The Patriots have some issues. They are struggling. I think it's more of a GM issue, Bill Belichick, the poor GM, as opposed to Bill Belichick, the poor head coach. But I have confidence that the Patriots will right the ship and figure out a way.
You talk about the quarterback. You sound a little bit like a ball watcher here. I mean, in the
what?
trenches, there's no question the Dolphins are a better team, right?
No, I disagree.
We saw the Dolphins push around the Patriots.
We did, but that was in South Florida's heat and humidity.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. A lot of players said that they felt like the monkey got on New England's back, especially in the second half of the game. Now, can I sit here and say that the Patriots are better in the trenches than the Dolphins? No. Can I say that the Dolphins are better than the Patriots in the trenches? I really can't say that. I think the Patriots should be playing better on the defensive side. I really do think that they have had the talent for an elite defense. However, it hasn't been produced on the field. I expected their offense to struggle. I expected their tight end, Gronkowski, to play at 70%. I expected them to struggle with the running game. And they've struggled probably a little bit more than I expected.
Yeah, well,
But hey, maybe the Chiefs are just that good. We don't know that.
They certainly look good the last 2 weeks. And, of course, we were hitting the panic button after that loss to the Chiefs because we thought that there were a lot of mismatches there for the Dolphins, and we were wrong. So now,
Yes.
Dolphins
Maybe the
are...
Chiefs are better than we think.
Okay, so then my question is, are the Raiders just really, 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 really bad?
Yes.
Or can the Dolphins, what can the Dolphins take out of this one?
You know what? I thought the Raiders were probably the worst NFL team that I've seen since I've probably covered the 1-15 Dolphins. I think they are historically bad.
Okay.
Not just from a talent standpoint. They've got 3-4 defense, 4-3 personnel. The Dolphins did some things offensively, schematically, where they had the 2 tight ends out there throwing quick hitches to Mike Wallace, and the Patriots never defended it, never adjusted. And to me, that's poor coaching. And probably the reason why Dennis Allen is no longer the head coach there. I mean, it was just a horrible coaching job that even the most novice of football observers can figure out, hey, there are 2 tight ends blocking 2 cornerbacks with Mike Wallace free on the end. That's not a good idea. So, I would say Oakland is probably the worst team in the NFL, if not probably one of the worst of the decade. And it wouldn't surprise me if they go winless. But I think
winless.
Tony Sparano, he can sneak out 2 victories.
Well, it can't be any worse than Dennis Allen has been. Of course, the show is all about you. We incorporate your questions each and every week. Our first question comes from Eric Wolf at EricWolf3784, who would like to know, does Joe Philbin have to be the guy to inspire the troops, or can he just be the strategist? I actually heard a radio host in Miami 2 weeks ago talking about Joe Philbin. Well, if Laser's the guy here making the offensive calls, Joe Philbin's not the rah-rah guy.
Okay.
He's not the offensive strategist guy, because that's
the
Laser.
defensive guy.
He's not the defensive guy.
He's
not
not
the guy you
special
motivate
teams.
around. He's not. Who is he? What is he? What is he doing? What does he do for this
Joe
team?
Philbin creates game plans.
Okay.
And that's really where his strength is in terms of the strategy, the approach. That's what he did in Green Bay. He's an organizational guy. I joke around and call him the librarian because that's kind of his nature, or the principal, because he's kind of a stickler for discipline and order and things of that nature. He's a guy that creates the structure, creates the foundation, creates the game plan. Now, who's to say can he not be rah-rah? Can he not inspire men? I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. I have not heard players say that, yeah, Joe challenged us and Joe inspired us. You hear that about a lot of coaches. Bill Lazor. Last week it was Kevin Coyle, who basically challenged the secondary, said, you guys are too good to not have any interceptions. You need to step it up. That's on you, not anybody else on this team. You're not doing your part. And that really motivated them to produce the 3 interceptions that they had. And 4 turnovers, because they also had a fumble recovered that was returned for a touchdown by Cortland Finnegan. Does Joe Philbin have to be rah-rah or to be inspirational or to be a Tony Sperano type in your face to get a reaction from his teammates? I would say no, because if you look at Tony Dungy, they have similar personalities. Wouldn't we say that Tony Dungy was one of the better coaches of this era? I mean, I would say yes, but I think part of the problem is that Tony Dungy had a hands-on approach with the defense, whereas Joe Philbin doesn't really have a hands-on approach from an offensive standpoint.
Well, and you hear that Tony Dungy's players, after they play for him, they talk about the love that they have for the coach, the passion. Is that easy to say like that? Is that it? Or because I don't really hear the Dolphins players talk about passion and love when they're talking about Joe Philbin.
You know what? I think Joe has made a couple of missteps in his first season. For going from your first season where you're just trying to understand the personnel, and then you go to year 2 where you clean out the locker room and especially clean out people with strong personalities. Then you learn from that.
Right.
And the flip side is year 3 where you realize, hey, I got rid of all my leaders. I got rid of all the people with strong personalities. I can't win with a locker room full of choir boys, and then they go and add Cortland Finnegan, add Louis Delmas, add people with strong personalities to the locker room. You learn as you go, and that's part of the reason the issue that I have with Joe Philbin is an issue I have with first-year head coaches. I'm no longer a supporter of first-year head coaches. No longer believe in them. I've had Cam Cameron, had Tony Sperano, had Joe Philbin, and the correlation that you've discovered with first-year head coaches is they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And that becomes a problem. So right now, you want to get through the learning. You're going to get through the learning issues, and I think this is the year for Joe Philbin where he's discovered kind of what he doesn't know. You look at the quarterback situation and how he handled it. It was a complete misstep.
Right.
A botched bomb blew up in his face,
Yeah.
and he decided that the best way to solve this problem was to say, okay, no longer am I ever going to talk about depth charts
ever
again. And that's not the right approach to take into the situation. What you should have said is you should have endorsed your quarterback and said he needs to play better.
Right.
And that was the message you wanted to get across to everybody in South Florida and in your locker room and to Tannehill. You should have said it.
Right.
Instead of playing this game. Lesson learned.
Well, we had an opportunity to see Tannehill produce his 5th game with a 100-plus passer rating.
Oh, 5th and 35. Oh, great. Yeah.
At least it happened, and at least he looked
Against a
good
bad team.
doing it. So what should we expect the rest of the season? The Tannehill that struggled against the Bills and Chiefs, or the one that looked a lot better against the Raiders?
I think what you can expect is a Ryan Tannehill that will remain inconsistent. He's been inconsistent throughout his entire career. He's been inconsistent throughout his college career. One game he's going to be good. One game he's going to be average. One game he's going to be bad. When you add them all up, it comes out to a average quarterback. Hopefully, my goals from the beginning of the season, I said this endlessly during the summer. 3 goals for Ryan Tannehill. I don't care what he does. I don't care if he runs for 50 touchdowns. I don't care if he throws for another 50 touchdowns. I've got 3 goals for Ryan Tannehill. 9 wins. That means he produces the Dolphins' first winning season since 2008. A winning record. 23 points, which in my estimation, doing the history of the teams during Joe Philbin era, the Dolphins are 6-1 when they score 23 points. And I think that's the number you got to get to allow this defense to play to their strengths, which is pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. And then also, he's got to get to an 85 quarterback rating. That is the baseline. When you look at yearly, I look 10-year study, an 85 quarterback rating usually leads to a winning quarterback in the NFL. Whether it's like Matt Moore, he started 6-6, and he had an 87 quarterback rating. It is the baseline to a 500 season, and in order for you to get to a winning season, you got to at least get to the baseline.
Let me ask you about something that I hear all the time. coaching staff needs to take their shackles off of Ryan Tannehill. They
There are
need
no
to
shackles on Ryan Tannehill.
let him go. Let him throw. What? I mean,
I would
that's
say
just total.
I would say the only shackle that I've ever really known that there was on Ryan Tannehill is they didn't want him running. And they probably
Okay.
still don't want him running.
Right.
They're not comfortable with him running because if he gets hurt, like all these quarterbacks are
Right.
getting hurt in the NFL, the fear is to unleash Matt Moore. I don't really know why there's this fear of unleashing
Right.
Matt Moore, but then, like the fear in 2011 when you unleashed him and you finally saw that he's probably a better quarterback than Chad Henne, they don't want to look stupid.
Right.
So that's usually where the fear exists. There's always fear about quarterbacks. There's always fear about quarterback controversy and quarterback debate and quarterback development and quarterback, how many starts does he have? Listen, to me, a good quarterback should be making his team better and lifting up the talent level of the offensive line, of the running back, and of the wide receivers. I would say right now, the only unit that I personally believe that Ryan Tannehill is making better is the running backs.
Right.
Because his play selection in terms of but people don't understand, is there aren't called runs and passes. There are two plays that are called in the huddle. And Ryan Tannehill basically has to select which one based on what the defense is doing. And he's doing a great job in run pass. The Dolphins are averaging 5 yards a carry. They have the fifth best rushing attack in the NFL. So that's helping them. And it's Ryan Tannehill that's doing it, not just the backs or the offensive line.
And I think the coaching staff's doing a good job of the 1 or 2 times a game of being able to exploit his speed and busting off for like an 8-yard run. And it's happened a couple times where it catches the defense just perfectly, but when you start calling 4 or 5 of those a game, that's when you get your quarterback nailed because they start watching for
You
it.
know what? I think they need to move the pocket a little bit more, and they do on instances, but I think they do it too much for big plays. I think you just also need to do it for the intermediate stuff. And certainly, I've always said he needs to run for a first down or 2 per game, and just to keep defenses honest and cheat a little. And running quarterbacks, they do help you cheat a little. Only problem is it makes them susceptible to hits, and you don't want quarterbacks taking too many hits.
Earlier this week, you wrote a column about how Miami's lack of consistency is the one thing that has been the most consistent thing during the Joe Philbin era, and man, have we seen that this year. How can the coaching staff and players fix this? Is this a coaching or player problem, this consistency thing?
I think it's both. I mean, from an execution standpoint, execution is the issue, and that can't be on players all the time. I mean, you look at the linebacker issues, tackling. They coach tackling. They work on tackling. So when you get to the game and you're not tackling, whose problem is it? Is that the coach's problem, or is it your problem because you can't get your man down?
Right.
So I think execution has to work better. I think the coaches need to put some of their players in better positions to be successful. I think certain players like Will Davis, you probably need to move him off the field. When you see a guy struggling, you have to do a better job of sort of limiting those struggles, and it'll benefit your team in the long run. I think the use of certain players like Daniel Thomas and Jarvis Landry puts them in better situations, and I think they're doing a better job of that. But, from a consistency standpoint, it has to be on the coaches because he sets the foundation, he sets the agenda, he sets the practice schedule, the routines, the things that they work on in practice. So everything starts at the top and it funnels down. So I think if you just look at this Dolphins team since 2012, consistency is the issue. Sometimes they look great, sometimes they look bad. They play to the level of their opponent. And that's not even just Joe Philbin thing. That's been the trend of this Dolphins team and organization for years. They just they play to the level of their opponent.
So in this roller coaster season so far, 4 games, very inconsistent. Is there one thing that you have seen consistently, either good or bad, through 4 games?
I like the running game.
Yeah.
I really like what I've seen from Lamar Miller, especially the past 2 games. He's shown you flashes that he has starting back potential. I think he's on pace to rush for nearly 1,200 yards with just 13 carries a game, which to me is very impressive. And in fact, he still hasn't even broken a big run because Lamar is a big run producer, and yet he's second in the league in 20-yard runs, but he still hasn't broken the big one. And eventually that's coming, and you can see that it's coming. And I like the way the secondary has played in spurts in certain instances. I think some of the cornerbacks can play a little bit better. I mentioned Will Davis a little bit earlier. I don't know where the Will Davis that I saw in the exhibition season went, but he's disappeared. He's vanished in there. And then, the safety play. it's got to get better. And
Yeah.
that's Louis Delmas, that's Jimmy Wilson, and hopefully when Rashad Jones comes back, he makes an improvement.
Let's take another question. This one comes from Jeff Jazuski 13. Who wants to know, if you were the head coach, which player would you give more playing time to?
If I were the head coach, certainly I would like to see more Chris McCain. I've always said I need to see more Chris McCain. Now, he wasn't available for a London trip, and he's been injured the week.
Right.
You know, he's been sick the week before, injured the week before. There's always something. This week he had a death in the family last week, so that's excusable. But I just think Chris McCain is a player where you feel his presence on the field, and you're just really talking about swapping out Philip Wheeler on some plays.
Right.
You know, most Dolphin fans. And I will say this about Philip Wheeler: he's playing well. He's not as much of a liability as he was last year. So I can't sit here and criticize his game. You can't look at a play and say, you know, except for maybe the first game of the season, and say, oh, Philip Wheeler got killed on that.
Right.
Or you know, maybe I think it was Buffalo where, you know, that's besides the point. You know, you can't look at the team and say, oh, man, Philip Wheeler, he's such a liability. But I would love to see, you know, McCain, yeah. I would love to see McCain on the field providing more of a presence. And he was used in the speed package. That's his role. It was Deion Jordan's role.
Yeah.
And I would love to see him continue to be used in the speed package, even if Deion Jordan just comes back.
Okay. Well, bye week comes this week. Really, during an NFL season, at any point, a bye week comes and it's a time to heal up, and certainly the Dolphins need it at this point. They might need it later too, but at least they have it this week. Mike Pouncey likely to be back for the Packers game. You've got Noshawn Moreno still getting healthy. Shelley Smith, Billy Turner, Brandon Albert,
They're
all trying to get better. Misi in particular, talked to him this week. Sounds like he's going to be healthy and back.
I thought that last week too.
Well, you know,
he didn't play.
That extra week though adds that pad, and you've seen that with a lot of coaches too. They'll hold out guys the week before the bye just to be safe because they know there's that extra week there.
You know what's so strange? I've become obsessed about Koa Misi. Just from the standpoint, you watch it all exhibition, you watch it all training camp, even OTAs, him working as an inside linebacker. You watch it in the exhibition season, not a lot because small doses.
Right.
He had a shoulder injury, so they were holding him out for that too. Then you watch him in game one, and you saw him on the first drive, and you're like, huh, he made 3 tackles. Okay. This might work. and you know he's intelligent enough to be the director and conductor of that defense. And this is not saying anything negative about Jason Trezor.
Right.
He's been adequate in that job. But let's not pretend like that job does not belong to somebody else.
Right.
And that player is a 4-year starter and has been an adequate NFL starter. Whether it's with the Dolphins, Koa Misi can go start with the Patriots. Koa Misi can go start with the Bills. Koa Misi is an adequate NFL starter. So
and you spent 4 months training him to get this body, not just throwing Jason Trezor.
It's not just like all of a sudden, oh, here, Koa Misi. So I'm very excited to see that, especially now that you have a young guy like Jelani Jenkins who's blossoming in that position. If you have Koa Misi there identifying and saying, Jelani, look for this. This is coming, you know, directing traffic for him, it probably can help the entire unit play. So I would say Koa Misi's the guy I'm super excited to see play. Who would have ever thought I'd say that?
Well, here's another important guy that they're getting back, Rashad Jones. How excited are you to see, coming off the suspension, how he fits with this safety play that you say has been struggling?
You know what? It depends on which Rashad Jones shows up. Are we talking about the 2012 Rashad Jones, or are we talking about 2013 Rashad Jones? The difference is, in 2012, the Dolphins built an entire defense and a scheme around Rashad's skill set, which allowed him to, a lot of times, freelance. Rashad had no responsibility.
Right.
He didn't have to cover any tight ends. He didn't have to cover any scat backs. He didn't have to, you know, he didn't have to cover any zones. Rashad's opportunity was just to go out there and make plays. Now, they're using Louis Delmas in a similar role. And what's going to happen when those guys come back is Louis is going to swap and probably go to the free safety spot. I'm saying this is probably because the coaches are experimenting a lot with what's going on right now. When Rashad comes back, Rashad is not meant to be free safety. He takes too many risks to be the last line of defense. Now, Louis has played free safety the most of his career.
Right.
He's probably more suited for strong safety, except he's a very small guy, so he doesn't have the build of a strong safety. But if you put Rashad at strong safety, Louis at free safety, and then Jimmy Wilson at the nickel, you're strengthening what I would say right now is probably the strength of that Dolphins secondary, which is, I mean, strength of the defense, which is their secondary. Jimmy Wilson is a very talented nickel cornerback. Talking to people in the league, they had him rated as the 7th to 8th best nickel in the NFL last year. Now you're putting him back to a position where he's closer to the line of scrimmage, where he's got more experience. This is going to be his 3rd year covering the slot receivers of the league, the Danny Amendolas, the Wes Welkers, and he's going to be allowed to blossom, continue to blossom in a contract year. And as I said, you know, it's not very popular. Jimmy makes plays. Jimmy has a history of making plays, and he got his first interception against Oakland.
And that means that there's less Will Davis on the field.
Yeah, Will has struggled. I'm disappointed to see. I was super excited about Will Davis, but he's struggling pretty bad.
Yeah, he's a nice kid. I like talking to
Yeah,
him.
he's real fun to talk to.
Oh, well.
But you got to play well, too.
Okay. At Lonnie Love wants to know, how big of a difference will Jones make on the Dolphins' D? We basically just answered that question. So let's move on. You have a more to add on the difference?
You know what? If he comes back and he is instinctive, if they have linebackers that can now cover. Misi can cover. Jelani Jenkins can cover. You know, and I think if you use that package and have those linebackers covered like they did in 2012, I think you might get back the Rashad Jones that you knew back in 2012.
Well, you know, and a lot of times, this kind of suspension, you feel like you've been away from your team, you feel like you've let your team down,
Absolutely.
You come back with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, and he's a guy where a chip on his shoulder helps him. You know, motivates him.
Yeah, I think, you know, he played well when he was trying to get that $30 million contract.
Right.
And once he got the $30 million contract, maybe your foot came off the gas.
Yeah.
Now you've let your teammates down. It gives you a little added sense of motivation. Plus, you've seen that they got along just fine without you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so it's probably maybe a wake-up call.
All right, at 954 Italiano says, with Pouncey coming back,
That's my Italian gambler, just so you know.
Is it? Okay. So what happens with Samson Satele?
Samson Satele has never played guard because he's small for his position. And I personally believe he just becomes the utility backup. Now that Dallas Thomas is there, you want to continue to invest in Dallas Thomas as a starter. Samson Satele has been an 8-year veteran in this league. He's probably on his last leg. What is the point of continuing to invest in him as opposed to investing in Shelley Smith or Dallas Thomas? There's no upside to it. Now, if you see that Dallas Thomas is struggling mightily, then you say, okay, Samson, go ahead and you try the right guard.
You got to win the
position.
game.
You got to get by. But the upside is to continue to invest in Dallas Thomas, and maybe he develops and has some chemistry with Juwan James, you know, his former Tennessee teammate, and they can become a potential Richmond Webb and Keith Sims. You know, that's a long way off, and you know that's a lot of high praise, but you have to continue to invest in the players who are your future, and that's Dallas Thomas and Shelley Smith.
All right, at Sean Fitz asks, Lamar Miller keeps the starting tailback job when Moreno gets back. Does he?
He had the starting tailback job when Moreno was healthy.
Does it matter? I mean, honestly, starting running back, it seems like when Moreno comes back.
It doesn't matter.
You talked about Lamar Miller is getting 12, 13, 14. He could certainly continue to get that same amount of carries when Moreno comes back.
To me, it's all about, one, who finishes the game. And the way the Dolphins use their backs is based on formations. They go series, 2 series, and then 2 series, or they do formations. Noshawn Moreno's a third down back.
Yeah.
That's what he does. And a lot of times, some of those third down packages, which are usually shotgun, the one back sets, as they call them, those feature Noshawn as opposed to Lamar Miller. So Noshawn is going to get his opportunities. I think where you're going to see the added value of Noshawn Moreno is the power game.
Right.
When they need to run a 3rd and 2, when you have to convert that 3rd and 2, are you really confident, even though Lamar Miller's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, that he's going to get that 3rd and 2 running with power?
Well, that's what makes him different. I mean, most third down running backs in the NFL are little guys who can catch the ball and move.
Yes.
Moreno's the one who's not only can catch the ball, but he can also is the guy that is the power back.
I mean, what's really shocked me, and this has just shocked the pants off me, is how effectively they've been able to run the ball.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're talking a 5 yard per carry, 5.7 for Lamar Miller. And we're not even talking about runs that he just busted big runs. No, this is just 10, 10, 12. You know, Chris Perkins is not very happy right now, but he's consistently grinding it out and getting first downs. Then you're talking about Noshawn Moreno. You saw the power that he had in the exhibition game against Dallas and the power that he brought against the New England game. Yeah, he only had one carry against the Bills, but you saw what type of back he was and the potential that he had to spark the offense and bring a powerful element to this team. And that's what they're too finesse. These Dolphins, for me, are way too finesse.
Okay.
If I had to say anything about Joe Philbin to criticize him, one, it would be one, consistency, and two, his teams are way too finesse. Noshawn brings that power, that dog, and that's what you need in order to be a good team, a 10-win team.
Well, this problem didn't really manifest itself as much against the Raiders, but as well as the Dolphins are running the ball, they're struggling a little bit to stop the run. How much of a problem do you see this is going forward?
I said it wasn't a problem last year for most of last year. Then teams ran for 1,998 rushing yards, which is too short of 2,000, and it certainly was a problem. What has me sort of confident is that they're only allowing 3.8 yards per carry. Now, that's pretty good, but they're stopping it for 2, they're stopping it for 3, they're stopping it for 1, but then the opponent pops off a 20-yard run or a 25-yard run. And that's a little bit alarming and a little bit troubling and very unsettling. I think also they're struggling with quarterbacks who are running out of the backfield, like you saw Alex Smith got them a couple of times. They've got to tighten up on those issues. I'm concerned about the run game without Randy Starks. Randy Starks sat out the London game. Missed his first game in 111 starts, 111 games because of a back issue. And he's a 30-year-old NFL veteran. Back issues just don't go away.
Right.
It's not all of a sudden, oh, I rested for 2 weeks and my back is great. Usually, you know, they got to get a shot, and there are all kinds of issues that can come from back issues. When you're a 330-pound man carrying, you know, lifting heavy weights and playing 300, taking on 2 blocks of 300-pounders, it's not going to get it's going to get worse before it gets better.
All right. So 5 of the next 8 games are on the road for the Dolphins, and obviously they're playing for 12 straight weeks. These first 4 games,
some Thursday night game.
Well,
Right,
and these first 4 games are supposed to be the easy stretch. So how difficult now is this? I mean, are we going to find out who these Dolphins are in this next stretch of 5, 6, 7 games?
I think you know, Joe Philbin has taught me this. Strange. Joe Philbin taught me this. You break the season down into quarters.
Right.
There's the first 4 games, the second 4 games, third 4 games, and then the important.
I thought it was every game at a time. It was 1 game at a time? It's not 1 game at a time. It's 4 games at a time?
Outside of the 1 game at a time.
Okay.
You break the season down into quarters. And the first quarter, Dolphins were 2-2. That was sort of my expectations for the team.
Okay.
Second quarter, I also have an expectation of 2-2, just because of the caliber of the opponents that they're facing. I think the Chicago Bears, one of my favorite teams, are very talented, especially from an offensive standpoint.
Did you watch the Packers last night? Packers are pretty good too.
Oh yeah, Packers put up a billion points on a bad Minnesota team. Now that's besides the point, with a horrible quarterback in Christian Ponder, and no running game. But I think Packers are going to be tremendously challenging. I looked at that game and I saw that their receivers are going to challenge the secondary. Their running back, Eddie Lacy, is going to challenge the Dolphins linebackers. They have a defense that I thought they were going to struggle on the interior, but they look like they've gotten it together and they found that next lane. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in that game. Dolphins have to consistently run the ball, and they got to hope that the heat and humidity gets to the Packers. Then you face the Chicago Bears. Then after that, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, you know,
should be a win. Should be a win.
Yeah, should be a win.
I mean, if the Raiders are the worst team in the NFL, the Jaguars are the second worst team in the NFL.
You don't know about that young quarterback from UCF that has, you know,
but
probably in another 2-3 weeks we're looking at a different quarterback. But then again, teams are going to adjust to him and sort of understand where his game is, and probably by the time he gets to the Dolphins, they'll have a blueprint on how to really contain him. And then you got the San Diego Chargers. I like the San Diego Chargers game, and I think that that's the must-win for the Dolphins from this standpoint. Chargers have no defense. Right. And Phillip Rivers is a good quarterback, but you know, and they've got a good running game. But if you've got no defense, you should be able to score points, especially at the fact that the game is in your own backyard. And the Dolphins have played well against the Chargers over the years. So to me, I think that second quarter of the season is a 2-2. Where the season gets dicey to me is in late October, November, and I believe they've got 5 of 7 games on the road, and that's really where you're going to determine. I think the Dolphins have to win at least 3 of those road games.
All right, let's take some quick hit questions, some rapid questions before we go on. Danny S. Parker would like to know, what would be your 2 most important adjustments over the next 2 weeks?
I would love to see them try to establish more of a power rushing game. I'd love to see them work out of the I formation and not just be so finesse out of the shotgun all the time. I would love to see them move Mike Wallace a little bit more. I know that he's asking for more than 2.
Right.
I would love to see, you know, Chris McCain work in the blitz package and Rashad Jones get back to being the free roaming Troy Polamalu type safety and utilized like that. I think it plays to his strengths. I'm not a huge Rashad Jones fan, but I do know that he can be a playmaker, and I think you have to figure out a way to earlier in the games make more impactful plays so that in the fourth quarter you can have a lead. You can allow the defense to pin their ears back and go get quarterbacks.
Is Marcus Thigpen someone you want to see on the field more?
Not on the field as a offensive player. I think more, I'm a little bit unsettled about Jarvis Landry as a returner, and I've always been that way, even in the exhibition season. I just saw things that made me a little bit uncomfortable, and I would rather be certain and secure and giving you very little than, ooh, sometimes I'm great, sometimes I'm horrible, you know, and I just don't think you can afford turnovers. Now, he's a young guy. He's learning from his mistakes. Hopefully you can. I would probably spend another 2 weeks continuing to invest in him, learning from his mistakes to see if he can handle that job without any help. But I'm glad Marcus Thigpen is back and he's here.
I mean, in my opinion, Landry has been a very good kickoff returner.
Okay.
And a
mediocre,
very bad punt returner. So
that's
I mean,
a fair assessment.
you know, a
yeah.
very bad punt returner. Maybe not
very
good,
bad.
but I mean, there's been fumbles. There's been fair catches at the 2. It's been very bad. It's
okay.
So, but the kickoff returning has been good. He's blown some big ones. He hasn't scored yet, so I guess we can't call him very good.
They also signed LaMichael James from former 49ers cast off, and you know, he had a promising career at Oregon, but you got to be concerned about where he is, a talent standpoint, maturity. He's a bust, you know, who's trying to redeem his career with the Dolphins, and he's also a return option. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him, and also how they utilize Thigpen if they need him.
All right, these are called rapid fire for a reason.
All right,
you know?
okay, sorry about that.
Great. At Cortega24, true or false, read option should be used more?
Yeah, it's used now. I mean,
more.
It's used now.
Okay.
I'm not more, because you want to read option. You're going to expose your quarterbacks to hits, and next thing you know, you got RG3 on your hands. No, thank you.
Okay. At Jordan Waldman 1, is Earl Mitchell the best player falling under the radar for the Dolphins?
Yeah, probably. I think he's been consistently good. Now, I would love to see him play the run a little bit better than he has.
Derek Shelby's made some plays too.
Yeah.
On that line.
Oh no, yeah. I would say Derek Shelby is probably very consistently, and I just wrote a story about him in the Sun Sentinel. He's so reliable and consistent. It's going to be hard for anybody, including Deion Jordan, to unseat him. I mean, think about the plays that Shelby's contributed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I withdraw.
Okay, withdraw. So it's not Mitchell. It's Shelby. Okay, good.
It's Derek Shelby.
Okay. We've asked that question a few times. Let's see. Robert asks, how do the Dolphins effectively contain Aaron Rodgers?
Keep him in the pocket.
Yeah.
Don't be concerned about his cadence and his snap counts. I listened to that game on Thursday night, and oh man, his language and his cadence, it was brilliant. And you know, the communication, the line of scrimmage, and how he could throw you off with all the language and verbiage that he uses, and fake snap count. It's amazing. But yeah, keep him in the pocket, force him to throw. And I know people are going to say, you know, do you really want Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball? Yeah, you kind of want to make a team one-dimensional, force them into 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 7s, stop the run, and force Aaron Rodgers to beat you.
Okay. Whoa. Okay.
Challenge. There's a challenge on the plate.
Okay.
So, Omar, this is for you. Challenger Wolf0933 from Twitter. He says, he follows you on Twitter. He says, you've always said 9-7 or everyone out. What happens if Dolphins makes the playoffs at 8-8 or even at 7-8? Hashtag X Omar.
There's no way any NFL team is going to make the playoffs at 8-8. I just don't see it. I know the AFC isn't very good right now. Especially the AFC East.
Oh, it's bad.
AFC East is garbage. Yeah. And if you can't reduce 9 wins in a garbage division, I mean, it might be the worst division in the NFL right now. You have to get to 9 wins in order to be a playoff contender. You might win the AFC East with 9 wins.
Right.
Based on how the Patriots
should. I think that's gonna happen. All right. So before the season, you predicted the Dolphins would have a 9-7 record. You still see that possibility as a possibility right now?
Oh yeah, I absolutely do. From this standpoint, I don't think that a lot of the opponents that they're facing outside of the Denver Broncos or are elite status. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like the 49ers. I know they've got their issues, or the Seattle Seahawks are on the schedule. I think every game that you play, except for maybe Denver, is probably a winnable situation, whether it's at home or on the road. And realistically, you got to look at it from this standpoint. Coaches are still playing for their jobs, and players are still playing for their status and their footing in the organization. So they still got a lot to play for, more than I would say a lot of organizations. What does Oakland have to play for?
Oakland has nothing to play for.
What does Jacksonville?
What a disaster.
What does Jacksonville have to play for?
They're fighting. They're going to see what Bortles can do for them. I think that's what they're fighting for.
But they're still a team
they're
that
fighting
have talent.
to see if they have a future. Is basically
what's Tampa playing for?
Well, apparently something, because that was enough to beat the Steelers last week.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that the players have to figure out what their motivation is. And if your motivation, I wrote a column comparing Tony Sparano's final season in 2011 to Joe Philbin's season this year, which could be his final season.
Sure, could be.
And you got to figure out what your motivation is. This team has not played to their talent level all of Joe Philbin's tenure, all of his career. And you got to figure out whether you want to be that team that underachieves every single year, or you want to find a new coaching staff that can actually maximize his talent. And that's what these players have to identify. Do they want Joe Philbin and his staff to be their coaches? To me, it's a simple argument. And you have to get 7 of the next 12 games.
And that brings it full circle to what does Joe Philbin bring to this team, and is he the guy that guys rally around? Is he just a librarian, and will guys go to battle for the librarian here over the last 12 games? All right, so that's been the bye week. X's and Omar, thank you so much for joining us. We're back to our regular schedule coming up next week, Wednesday at 12:15. You can find this show re-aired on sunsentinel.com later today in case you missed anything, because we did go pretty long. Don't forget to check out the First and 10s with rookie tight end Gator Hoskins and offensive lineman Darren College.